Hey, and happy Saturday! How's everybody doing? And hey, how do I sound? Do I sound okay? We had a little bit of concern right before we went live. Does my voice sound good?
Yeah.
Do I sound normal?
The stream, it sounds normal. I'm not sure why it sounds different for me, but that is okay.
Well, Pseudo's broken, but that's okay. I'm not, and that's what matters. Oh, it's a little dark in here, isn't it? Let's open some curtains. So hey, everybody, how's it going? How's your Saturday? Happy long weekend if you're in an area that gets a long weekend. I'm in an area that gets a long weekend, so happy long weekend to me. I hope everybody's doing well. We've had some hockey already. I'm sure some people have been enjoying that. Hey, Boards. Hey, Pookie. Hey, all you viewers that are lurking. We're starting with some Dante today. Rip Pseudo. Hey, GlenCon. Welcome. Hope your audio gets sorted out. Apparently, at least the headphones are working.
I think it's just Discord for me for some reason.
No, I was helping him with an audio issue earlier today, doing some debugging of a new Windows interface device, because we all know how well Windows plays with audio interfaces. It's such an easy thing to set up, right? So, who remembers Dante's Inferno? Show of hands in the chat. Who remembers Dante's Inferno? Do you remember when I played it? Does anybody remember the great saying, "I parried her vagina penis"? Because that was, let's recognize that was a thing that was said while I was playing that game. It did happen.
It is a thing in the game. It is a very, very, very strange game. You fight some very, very weird things. Yep. Especially the first time I played it, I did not expect to see. It was,
yeah. I didn't expect that. I did not really. Well, I did expect. I have clearly missed out on something. Yes, if you didn't see Dante's Inferno, you absolutely missed out on something. That game was a game. Thoroughly a game. However, it also ended up being a lot better than I expected. Like, a lot better than I expected. Maybe I just didn't have high hopes for it.
It was a pretty big game when it came out, especially with it was kind of the era or golden age of those kind of God of War like action. I guess what do you call it, adventure, but just action games, action fighting games, and it. Like, God of War had some kind of risque bits and some, a bunch of gore and mature themes. Like, Dante's Inferno was just like, let's just take that and crank it to 11, because why not? It's going to get mature anyway, so it was quite the release.
That's more or less what I expected. You ended up enjoying it. Yeah, but I mean, when we're talking about the escalation from God of War, like, God of War comes out, and its marketing strategy is tits and gore, and people bought it up. I mean, it was a good game. It was well made. It was fun. It had pretty good control, but their marketing was really tits and gore, and that's what sold the game. And as soon as I saw this, it's going to be an evolution of traits, right? Like, it's just the natural. If that's how they sold it, then somebody else is going to go, if tits and gore sells well, more tits and gore is going to sell better. And that's what gave birth to Dante's Inferno. It's that desire to push the envelope. And you know what? It did sell. Maybe not as well as they thought, because titser and gorer. Yes, basically. Basically is what the whole idea of Dante's Inferno was. And you could tell there wasn't a ton of thought beyond that. And the game really falls apart at the end. The ending is not good. Not good. You know what? We should do a panel on last bosses.
Yeah, it's a pretty important part of the game.
It is. It is. No, and I'm not just talking villains. Villains is an entirely different panel, but actual last boss encounters, the last boss fight. There's certain things that should be done in a last boss fight that the game didn't do. We'll talk about them a little bit, but I don't want to go into it for an hour because we have other things we have to talk about today. but I think I could go on for a couple hours about just last boss encounters. So we'll do that sometime. Okay. Writing. We always start at the bottom. We build these things up. 10 out of 10 Cleopatra. How's it going, Rubido? Welcome. Welcome. You know this game then. So you're in for this discussion. Believe in your ability to go on for an hour about lots of things. Yep. Yeah, I can talk. I can talk. Shirt. Accurate statement. Your friend wrote a thesis on it. Right on.
That's pretty cool.
On the game or on actual Dante's Inferno? We're not really talking about Dante's Inferno, the classic novel, the game. That's even cooler. Because, I mean, you could easily do a thesis on the novel. The game, the end. Oh, the end. So world building. His section on Cleopatra was amazing. Right on. Yeah, we're not going quite to thesis level. We're really sticking to the game design side of it and the experience of the game for the average person to be able to enjoy. But you know, we're totally up for the discussions as they come up. We love that stuff. The game's good. The game's okay. I'm sure that's what this will represent.
Yeah, I mean, when the time it came out, it was a solid title. It had its problems, but it was kind of in that still an era of, you know, all these games had problems they're trying to iron out. You know, a lot of these patterns and kind of tropes and mechanics that are smoothed out nowadays, you know, were pretty infant back then. But it was like it was enjoyed. It was enjoyed by many. It was a solid title.
So we're gonna jump right into world building and just throw out a good, probably. Because I think that each layer of hell was pretty unique.
Yeah, well, it not just that, but when it's pulled from source material like this, like from the actual epic of Dante's Inferno, you're basically already given the world, but you still, you know, need to translate that into you know, the video game media, and I think they did a very, very good job of doing that. It conveyed the original, you know, intent and theme around the original story, but, you know, made it so that it worked well in a game setting. There's a lot of, you know, like books or movies that can be translated to games, and you find it's not a one-to-one medium. It's not as easy to do as it seems. You know, like if you don't pace it properly, or if you don't, you know, you can either get too linear, and if you don't write it properly, or if you kind of just take it too directly, it'll be kind of boring. But I found that they did it pretty well. They took the source material, took inspiration, and designed each one of those levels of hell very well.
The enemies correspond decently. I thought some of the design of the enemies was strange. Like, I didn't really like their design of Cerberus. Just didn't. It's not that it's bad or good, I just didn't like it. But, puzzles? Mostly the puzzles fall in. I mean, the puzzles are mostly environmental puzzles, right? And the environment itself was well designed, that it felt like that layer of hell. So, yeah, I would say that through extension, most definitely. And the enemies were all themed to that level, but the enemies aren't exclusive to that level either. Like, you'll see them multiple places after you've encountered them on that first floor. Might have been nice to have more uniqueness of enemy stand out, because it doesn't make sense that you're fighting the lust monsters over and over again after that. And I would have been totally happy with never seeing them again after that floor. The worst enemies in the game. I hated those things. They weren't even fun to fight. They were just terrible. God damn penis vaginas. They were impossible to parry. I think I parried one penis vagina the whole game. That was it. And that's why it was such an exclamation when it happened. I was like, I parried a penis vagina! Yeah! Strange game. But I still felt it was good.
Yeah, you definitely felt like you're going through hell.
The world felt fleshed out. Each floor of hell was unique and corresponded well to the ideology of the floor. Yeah? Huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, characters, I think, are solidly okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's they they did an okay job on them.
There's nothing special about them. Dante's just some guy from the Crusades. I neither liked
They
nor disliked him. I cannot say I overly cared about him at all by the end.
And then along with pulling from source material, they did an okay job as that as well. I mean, there's a lot of games nowadays that will try to throw a spin on like a classic character, and it can just fall flat. And I'm kind of glad they didn't with this. They kind of just stuck. They definitely added a lot to that original story. I mean, like everything, like the looks and acts and all the action, of course, around it wasn't the original story, but the character himself, the way he conducts himself, is still at least fits in with the theme. So it's good, but overall, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, there's nothing. Like I said, there's nothing special. He's not some deep, interesting character. There's not going to be any amazing character revelations. He doesn't really change as a person throughout the story. He's just sort of a decent enough vessel to deliver Dante action to the player.
And then what about the antagonists and a lot of the boss characters?
I didn't care about any of them, short of them being a name from history or mythology somewhere. That was about the only impact I had by them. I was like, oh, hey, I recognize that name from somewhere.
Yeah, and then
it's not like they went out of their way to like develop a character and a personality for these people. You don't know who they really were in the game, other than you know who they were out of the game if you know the mythology, and they were given a name, and just by giving them that name, they sort of pushed that character symbolism onto them and then gave them a arbitrary move set and let you fight them.
Yeah, a good contrast to this is the way that they did the characters in like God of War 3, where you kind of just show up to them, you don't really know too much if you don't know, the mythology behind it, but they still gave each one like a very distinct personality, and interacting with them was like it gave you a sense of like you felt like they were authentic, like you felt like this is an actual character god that I'm going to kind of mess up, and it's a bit memorable that way. Whereas I found with this, they were kind of just like, yeah, I'm this evil person, and now we're going to fight, and then now I'm going to die, and then now you're going to keep going. So there's definitely, of course, like improvements that could have been done there. Yeah,
it's a very, very gamified experience. It's very much, hey, an encounter. Hey, you've defeated the encounter. Hey, next encounter. Hey, you've defeated the encounter. And that was about it. They are able to deliver action to the in a reasonable way. That's about all I have to say. That's really all the characters are for, is just to deliver unto you action to partake in. Would you say the game may have been trying to rely too much on external information for characterization? I think you could say that. You could definitely make an argument for it. You could also just say that they were way too thin on their characters.
Yeah.
Was it that they're relying on you knowing who they are, or was it just that they're not very good character writers and we're using a historical character? 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
I think they used the source material, which carried a lot of the weight they needed to do. But I think it probably also wasn't their intention to make a super captivating story with this. The story, of course, has been told, and it's not really something that will be too new for a lot of people. They get kind of the gist of it. But also, this was definitely more of an action game first, with a bit of a story after, which was very common for the time it came out. There was quite a bit of these that did the same thing, where it's like, a lot of people just want to have a bit of mindless action, beat a bunch of stuff up, fight a boss, and then keep going. They don't always want to have that full kind of captivating story, or the full fleshed out characters, because a lot of times people might even just skip these cutscenes. But nowadays, with a lot of the better cutscene animations we have, it's a bit more involved effort, and with a lot of those extra technology, these cutscenes really kind of drag us in. Even the people who just wanted that action, really enjoy some of these cutscenes that are in games such as like the new God of War and like Last of Us. But compared to back in the day, it was kind of standard for them just to be like, yep, here's characters. You don't really care too much. It's all about the action.
Yep. And that brings us to the storyline. which is an extension of the characters and exactly what you're talking, and is solid. You know what? Is it okay or is it bad?
I wouldn't say bad.
You wouldn't say bad? I'd say okay at best.
Yeah. I thought they did a good job pulling from that source material. I mean, they are kind of limited with what they have to work with when they bind to that. And it definitely, it could have been a whole lot worse. There's a whole lot of worse stuff they could have done. You know, they could have cut out a lot more than what they did. They could have, you know, changed a lot of the themes that were in there. You know, they could have mucked around with it quite a bit, but they stuck to what it was, and they made a game version of it, which I think translated fairly well.
I think they could have done it in a better way still.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely room for improvement on the storyline presentation. But again, like we were talking about, storyline was never, ever their goal in this. It was not what they were trying to give you. They were trying to give you tits and gore and action. And it absolutely accomplished that. There was a ton of all of those things. Performance. I played it on PS3, right? Yes.
That's what I played it on.
Yes. I think it's only on PS3. It ran fine. I think it's 60, might be 30. Let me look up.
It's probably 30 if it's PS3. But I mean, if it's consistent, you won't really notice too much. I didn't remember any like significant frame drops that were like.
Visceral Games has said that Dante's Inferno is a better looking console game because it runs at 60 frames per second as opposed to more standard 30 FPS.
Wow, that's cool.
So let's give it a good.
Yeah, that's good. My books, so they can run it like that with that level of fidelity on that hardware. You know, look at Heavenly Sword that you just recently played, and how many frames you got with that. I'd say that Dante's was
That's what I got from that.
Dante's was a much better looking game than Heavenly Sword.
It can also be played on Xbox One. Well, it would be a re-release on Xbox One. That's a way newer generation than PS3. They got 60 FPS on a PS3 console. Period. There was minimal slowdown. I don't really remember much of any slowdown. And part of it was really just being... I forgot where I was going now. My mind just went blank.
Only slow down, like the game does slow down on purpose, I believe, during certain combos and certain moves. But on a performance level, I don't remember ever getting those like significant frame drops that were kind of common in games that throw a lot of enemies at you. I remember it being a consistent experience.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that they probably accomplished it in Dante's by never really overloading the screen with enemies. I never remember more than 6, 7 being on the screen at a time.
Yeah, which is a good amount. For a lot of these games too, when you throw too many enemies at once, you just notice that like half of them are just standing and waiting for their turn.
Yep.
And then the more you notice that, it starts to get kind of silly. And especially with like the amount of the resources it's taking just to have that person there, I get that it kind of adds to the immersion of I'm being surrounded by so many people. But I mean, all you can really do then as well is just have the camera a little bit closer in, so it's a bit more tighter around the smaller amount of enemies.
Yeah. 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 That's what I was going to say. Heavenly Swords. That's what their problem was, really. That last boss is really all the enemies running around on the screen with them that's causing the issues. You take that out, or even just have them... Like, you could put them on the edges without having them all in the middle to give the same sort of feel with all these people around, and have them non-interactable, just like an image playing there. Right?
Like
that takes so much resource away. Yeah, like the audience in a sports game.
Yeah, because like I was noticing that too in some of the cutscenes and some of the actual like fights and stuff you're in, they were rendering full models of the audience, and there was a lot of them. And I'm like, you're getting like 10 frames, and I'm like, they really didn't need to do this. I get what they were going for, since there's a launch title, being like, look what the hardware can do. But man, like at 10 frames a second, it's that poor PS3.
At that point, it's not look what the hardware can do. It's hey, look what the hardware can't do.
Yeah, it's like it was very unnecessary. It was like, man, I guess they're like, frames don't matter. As long as it, if it doesn't crash, we're fine.
Yeah, that game was so bad on that we ended up talking about its performance in another game's review.
Yeah.
Animation in Dante. I'm leaning toward good. I remember it being very smooth, very fluid. The enemies looked good. Their attacks were readable. I was able to intuit how they were moving, when they were going to hit me, made parrying much easier.
Yeah,
I liked it.
I agree. I really liked Dante's actual attack animations. I thought they did a really good job kind of linking those together and like when he does those different combos, especially when you get into like the aerial stuff, they can get very difficult to do, to have those looking well, not just kind of floaty and a bit silly. But it was well done. Like the enemies were so weird. They're so strange, but at least the animations matched it with on theme. They didn't just take like typical like humanoid kind of animations and slap these crazy models onto them. They at least put a lot of effort into how these things move around and interact with the world.
That's a good point. They even went as far as to bring a kid in and strap a motion capture suit to a toddler to get the toddler enemies right.
Right. Yeah, they could have just thrown a typical. They could have just used a regular sized or whatever they had on hand. It would look a bit silly, and they could clean it up. But it's cool that they went through the effort to get it that precise.
Agreed. And I don't consider hitboxes when we're doing the animation. That's more of a gameplay mechanics type thing, but I don't remember having many hitbox complaints. I don't. And there's enough iframe on the roll that it worked well together. I don't ever remember bitching about hitboxes in the game, not once. Not that I'm typically one to bitch about hitboxes.
When they're done bad, they're very noticeable.
Yeah, when they're done bad, they are very, very bad. But there's a lot of people that complain about decently done hitboxes. But then when you know what's going on with hitboxes and you're just like, oh wow, they got it that accurate there, you're just like, yeah, that was pretty good. I can't really complain. Like, they're never going to be perfect. It's so costly to make them perfect. You've got to cheat in places. It's just got to be done. Like still, if I can run through an enemy's legs, I'm amazed. I'm like, wow, they've got the collision detection to the point where I can go through models. That's cool, because that was never done before. Games couldn't do that when I started.
Yeah, you just had a box. You just put something in the box. Now we've got polygons. Very complex collision detection.
Read and respond to. Everything was very smooth and transitioned well. Animation transitions are one of the key things I look at when I'm judging animations. They're very important, not super easy to do, and very subtle and easy to miss.
They can be very jarring when done wrong.
Yes. I've missed enemies in Destiny 2 by shooting between their arms and their body. Yep, Destiny 2 has some very good stuff. One of the coolest things I saw in Destiny 2, and me and Rage both stopped went for a while I was doing it, and it was in the little town area, like the staging area. There's a box you can stand on, and there's like an 1.5 to 2 inch thick piece of metal on top of the box. And if you stand with 1 foot on the metal and 1 foot on the box, it actually gets that like 2 inch lift in one leg and has your feet on different levels. That blew me away. I was like,
I can't remember what the term for that locomotion's called, but it's something that got really popular the last couple of years, and it's super cool to see now. Basically, every game
it adds a lot.
You properly step on everything. It really does add a lot, especially when you play older games now, and you run upstairs and you have the same running animation. It really just kind of break the immersion quite a bit.
Yeah, and you're literally just running on an angle up the stairs, a nice smooth incline, hoping the feet line up with the steps. They never did. They never did. Style? What do you guys think of the style? I want your response. I want to see an okay, good, or bad on what you all in general in chat thought of the style of Dante's.
I see a lot of conflicting opinions when it comes to this for this game.
Good.
Which is very fair. It is definitely not for everyone. It is definitely up to the interpretation on how thresholds people have for the the kind of things this game will throw at them.
Well, that's not to say they liked it or not. I mean, I could see it offending people, but I think if it's a stylistic enough to offend people and be on point, that's a good style.
It can be, but that's it. I can see why people would be like, I think the style is just, they just went for grotesque and they didn't really, put a lot of. I could think this is from someone else's point of view. Just saying, they could say, oh, they just went for grotesque. They didn't put a lot of effort in. They just went for shock value, and it's kind of all over the place. Which would be a fair argument to make, but
it's not incorrect.
Yeah, but then because remember I played, I was like, this is. I'm like, okay, like I had a bit of what I was expecting when I was really playing. I'm like, oh, okay, this is wow. They went pretty ham with the with a bit of with the shock value. You're playing the game, you're like, this is what is this? You're like expect like I have no idea what it is, which is cool, and it really kind of fits the theme because they keep it consistent. At least that's why I say the style was good because they kept it consistent.
Yeah,
but man, it is. I do not blame someone if they don't think the style was good. If they didn't like it, I wouldn't hold against them. I can understand, but at least for me, I thought they did a good job. Especially with
well, like I said, with us, we always separate that I liked it and they did a good job. I can understand other people not being able to separate that. I'm sure a lot of people were just like, it's an unbaptized baby, this game is terrible.
Yeah, it definitely had a controversy with that. I think it was some international nanny association where they didn't like. I think there was a trophy. There was a trophy for like killing those enemies.
Yeah.
It's basically like
it's
trophy.
It's not for killing them. It's doing something. Like I think it's specifically punishing enough of them, because you can punish or redeem, right, on each enemy. And I think if you punish enough of them, you get the bad nanny achievement, is what it is. I was punishing everything because that's what I was going for, so I absolutely got bad nanny. I got that.
Yeah, I can definitely see I could definitely see why there's controversy with that.
See how big exaggerations of loads of things because it causes exactly those reactions in people. Yeah.
But I think it was a really good interpretation.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah, hell wouldn't cater to how you feel.
Nope.
Hell doesn't matter, right?
My only personal complaint was I hated the design of Cerberus.
I appreciated its uniqueness. I mean, yeah. I can see there's it's a consistent trope of what it should look like, but I mean, like you look at it and you're just like, the hell is that thing? Which I mean fits the theme of everything else in this game, which is what the hell is that thing? So at least, like I said, they kept it consistent. It's definitely a very, like I said, unique interpretation of Cerberus. I wouldn't call it bad, but I would say that they strived to be different and it fell a bit flat, but I still appreciate that they tried something else rather than, sticking to the...
I didn't call it bad, just for the record. Yeah. I didn't like it. I didn't. Yeah. It's just me. You might like it. I didn't. Let's see. Does anyone remember what Cerberus looked like?
I just remember its teeth.
This was their Cerberus.
Them pearly whites.
This guy.
It's definitely the most unique.
And it had these weird heads with mouths around their mouths, and it came out of this head mouth. It's a tongue of 3 mouths and other mouths breaking off of those mouths of a tongue coming out of a guy's face, and it's creative and it's interesting and it's different, but Cerberus was the dog of hell. It's always a dog. I just like doggos.
Yeah.
These concept artists have some interesting sources. Agreed. They were going for a gross glutton-like look. Yeah. Yeah, I know, it went along with the Third Circle's theme. Because he was encountered within gluttony. And that's well and fine and all, but that's just not the Cerberus I always have in my head. So it was off-putting to me. And that's just because I'm so accustomed to certain lore. I still gave it a good.
Cerberus is a definitely, dog. And this is one of those things I was saying before, where a lot of times when they'll use a source like this and try to gamify it, to keep things fresh, they'll try to, throw twists on age-old characters and age-old kind of monsters, which, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if it necessarily was the right idea to not have it be a dog. I still think they could have had the look, but still make it resemble some sort of canine. But it's overall, at least, it's still a good artwork. At least they didn't just make it like a person you fight with 3 heads.
The Cerberus in my head would have been encountered in Wrath and would have been this angry, aggressive animal. Yeah, me too. However, I believe that is probably just where Cerberus was encountered in Dante's Inferno when it was written. So they would want to keep it uniform. At which point, they want to make it fit in with that location, design and style-wise. But a gluttonous dog, fat and bursting and extra mouths coming out, multiple-headed dog, each one, drooling, and each one a glutton in itself, tearing you apart. They could have made it gross on top of that. But they got something super unique and interesting. And it is very unique. I'll give it that. I don't think I've seen anything quite like it anywhere. Kind of looks like a cross between aliens and some Japanese folklore monsters.
It is. It's a lot. It's all I can really say. A lot of times when you can't describe a style, it's usually a bad thing because it means it's kind of all over the place. But this is one of those things where this is a good way of just having it be kind of unidentifiable, because it's supposed to be you're supposed to be put in a world where everything is new to you, and you're super uncomfortable because you get that uncanny valley of I have no idea what's actually real and what's just inanimate, because the rules of my world don't apply here. It is definitely an unspeakable horror.
Unspeakable horror, yeah, accurate. Okay, musical score. Again, I want to know what you guys all remember. Doesn't mean we're going to listen to you, but I want to know what you guys felt. Do you even remember the music? Because we have a pretty distinct rule here that if you don't remember the music, it's an okay. And I gotta say, I don't remember the music.
Yeah, I don't too much as well. I remember it fit. It's kind of our rule, as you say, is the reason why we say if you don't remember it, it's okay. Because if you remember it, if it was bad, you would remember it because it would jar your experience. And if it was really good and enhanced your experience, you would also remember it. So if you don't really remember it, it usually means that the music was doing its job. As well as if there's lack of music, you tend to notice that as well a lot of the times. If it's not intentional, like you can do lack of music for, of course, horror and dramatic effects. But if the game just doesn't have it, you can typically notice it. If you're playing an action game silent, you'd be like, something feels off here.
Yeah. We've all played those games that are poorly written and the music only works for half an hour in the level, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've used too much memory, I'm going to stop playing music now, guys. And you're just running through a silent level now, and you're like, off. Something's wrong. Sinister the movie. Lack of noise to unnerve very well, huh? Right on. Yeah, a lot of old 70s movies that I like for old 70s horror and stuff use silence and whatnot very interesting ways.
Japanese horror is also really good at that. Absence of noise really builds the tension because you feel like you're waiting for something, especially if you had a lot of sound cues before then and everything's just silent. You just instinctively are just waiting for what's the next sound, and in a lot of Western horror, it's usually just a lot of build up to a jump scare, or in a lot of times in Japanese horror, it's just that's most of the movie is just this absent noise or this just uneasy tension of you just don't know what's happening next. You don't know what's going on. You can't get used to the pacing, and the audio is definitely not gonna let you know what's going on.
While we're talking about horror music, I studied film and writing and stuff like that, and when I was in high school, we had some really good classes on it that I took. One of the interesting case studies we did was about music in horror movies, and actually its origination in live theater as well. One of the tricks that lots of horror movies use is to play the music with a beat, a main downbeat, on the same timing as a human heartbeat. And your heart will actually take rhythm with the music. And then without you noticing, they'll slowly increase the pace of the music. Very subtly as this show gets more intense. And it will actually cause your heart rate to increase with the music, which causes all the corresponding elements of the body to start amping up. It gives you all that adrenaline rush. That's what gives you that real fear feeling. And this is effective to the point where in a live play where they brought the beat up too fast, there was actually a case of multiple heart attacks in the building due to the music. So an interesting thing to know about. Definitely do some research into it if you want to make a horror game, and don't kill people.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff for sound theory. And just being able to make people uncomfortable. It is surprising how well our brains react to even just the artificial noises that have probably never been heard before, because they can't at least exist too much naturally, and they just mess with us. These instant anxiety.
Yep. Audio is really, really cool for manipulating people. And we see it even used in, military warfare and stuff like that. Audio's legit.
Spam the Spice Girls for 24 hours.
Actually, Metallica was really pissed off because they were using Metallica to torture people.
Yeah, I would be pissed off. I don't blame them for being pissed off. It wouldn't be cool either.
Yeah, I wouldn't be cool with it either. Using my art to torture people? Fuck you guys. Anyway, enough of that. Voice acting. I'm giving it a solid okay again.
I thought it was good. I actually really liked all the animations they did. I found that at least for the cutscenes. So I'm okay with an okay for everything else, but a lot of the fully animated cutscenes I thought were good. They did a good job. Kind of.
I just remember Dante being kind of just bleh the whole game.
Well, that's kind of how he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be just that, methodic, devout kind of warrior that's just on a mission, and that's just how he is. He doesn't have an up or a down. He is just monotone doing it. But it was mostly like the interactions he had with other people, and I still thought like they did that okay, because it can be, even though it's a simple direction, it can be really hard to do a monotone kind of just badass warrior trope super well. Like it wasn't fantastic, but I still think it was good, at least for the cutscenes. Like overall, I'd say it's okay when it comes down to the voice acting that was done for a lot of the bosses and a lot of the fighting and stuff like that. It was got a little bit campy, but I wanted to just at least say that
campy's not a bad thing. Campy's not a bad thing. I actually like campy. You can have good voice acting while being campy. I'm trying to think back to some of his anguish scenes. I may have been just a little salty at that time too,
Yeah.
That's a possibility. There was a couple salty moments in the game. Went well with fries. What do you guys think? If we're touring on okay and good, where's everyone else landing? What do you remember? We need the chat input. I will find a wiki for all voice actors in the game to post in Discord. Okay. But that's okay. It's more the performance they specifically gave in that one that is the concern here.
Yeah, and I think it also boils down to, along with the story and stuff like that, I'm not too sure if they really, focused a lot of their budget to have perfect kind of voice acting and really flush that out. I think they, of course, got it to where it was good enough to fit what they were going for. So I'd say,
You're okay
I lean more.
Okay?
Yeah, I lean towards more okay. I just wanted to at least make the distinction for like a lot of those, animated cutscenes were quite well done. They felt like an actual, like they could have stood on their own as well from a lot of the game. At least I would have watched a short of just that.
Get the story across. Did not pull you out, and the animated cut scenes were quite well done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guy who played Lucifer did a good job too. He barely had any lines. He basically just talked. He never had any real expression or anything. He did okay. He did what he had to do, but what he had to do was nothing special.
Yeah, unfortunately, with all that stuff, it's more than just voice acting. And unfortunately, also boils down to writing and presentation and all that stuff. You can be a fantastically talented voice actor, But if the medium you're working with isn't going to be able to support that, there's only like so much that they can do.
Unless you're Robin Williams.
I mean, even then, I think some of the movies that he voiceovered in, like he definitely carried a bit, but overall, like it can get really hard for if there's certain characters and how they're written, it can still be a bit jarring.
He just killed every role he ever did. He did. Sound effects. Now, sound effects, I'm leaning good. Everything else was okay, but the meaty collision sounds, the sounds of the holy crosses flying out, the explosions of the crosses, even breaking things, jumping, just swinging in the air. It all sounded good.
Yeah, I'd agree. They did a really good job on that. It's a really important for this genre game too. I mean, that's mostly what it is. It's just carnage and just hearing the action, seeing the action, hearing the action, and kind of feeling the action. So if it isn't good sound effects, you really notice it in this game. Like it's especially with certain game genres, you'll see a repeating pattern of the ones that do it well will have these sections that like we'll have to rate them good, because that's of course what I say about intent, and that's what they focused on. Like if this game, like I said, had mediocre voice acting, it's not going to draw too much away from the experience. If it had mediocre sound design, if you're playing an action game with mediocre sound design, it really lowers the quality of the game.
Yeah, quickly.
The intent for it is to be action and carnage, and the story and voice acting help with that, but not as much as of course actual animation and sound.
The Holy Cross sound is stuck in my head forever. Exactly. I will never not be able to hear that sound when I think of it too. And it was a good sound. That BONG! You feel like you just wrecked something evil. And you did, if you put points into it, which I didn't. And that's why I got screwed at the end. The game is a lot more good and okay than I expected.
No, it's a surprisingly solid title. It's got its issues, which are more memorable.
We're getting to them.
Yeah, mechanically, but overall, like it's a solid game.
Yeah, I think the bads in it are only going to bring goods down to okay, is what's going to end up happening. Except for accessibility. I'm pretty sure accessibility is bad.
Yeah, as just was with that era.
As per the era, there are subtitles and individual volume sliders. That is all. If you can't play it as it is, you probably just can't play it. Which is sad, because it was a decent title. But there's better games out there today. So play those instead. Mechanics. Is it an okay? I guess it is an okay. It's not a good.
Yeah, I struggle with one quite a bit, because like I said, like mechanic-wise, it's very important for the genre. But then I'm contrasting it as well to the other games that are out in its time, and I feel like those other games kind of did that combo fighting a lot better, and the overall just...
Was it a combo fighter? I guess it was.
Yeah, you have your combo counter, but that's the thing too, right? You kind of just hitting things. There's not a whole lot of... There are combos you do, but it's...
I've really liked the parry system in the game. The perfect time parry system in it was great, and it worked well. But they didn't let you use it in the really important locations.
Yeah.
Like the bosses and stuff, you couldn't do it to.
I'm definitely good with okay. Especially the challenges were a piss off for the most part.
I mean, if I was just looking at that area, that would just be a bad.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys. That's not how you design a level. I know. Let's just do a series of challenges on platforms. Like, why am I dying when my combo ends? What about the game is causing me to die when my combo ends? How do you justify that?
Especially if they label it as challenges, it should be typically optional then.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's just work into the story if it's a main part of it. Otherwise, if it's just we're gonna skill check you here, but with a little mini game, it was kind of like, oh, all right, what's happening now? I gotta stay in the air for a bit, or I can't go further. It was it was a bit weird. It was definitely was like this didn't need to be like this. Maybe cool if it was like, you know, optional challenge that gave you something for it, similar like, you know, how a lot of other games in the era did it instead of like a mandatory one. But
Yeah.
overall, I still think mechanics were okay. It was still enjoyable. Some hiccups, but overall enjoyable.
There were bosses I liked. A lot of bosses I liked. Most bosses I liked. Last boss was fucking terrible. Terrible. And I will stand by that. You all want to argue with me? Please do. Try it. That was a bad boss. It tested exactly none of the skills that they gave you throughout the game. They were like, hey, you know all those bosses you fought? Forget it all. Learn this that you've never done before. All those skills that you've been putting points into? Yeah, none of them matter anymore. Now you got to do this gimmick. Just this gimmick. That's it. Use this gimmick to beat the boss. And also, it forces you to use your Holy Cross. I put like no points into Holy Cross my whole playthrough. I was a melee guy. So the one of 3 phases that they let me actually melee the last boss, I destroyed him in that phase. The rest of the time I was doing such little damage, I had to learn how to perfectly dodge everything he does, just to be able to beat him.
There's definitely a lot to say about final bosses, which we'll talk about in a panel. But it's quite common for games to really kind of drop the ball on the final boss. It really should, you know, kind of wrap up everything, try to tie. You need a bit of balance. You can't use every mechanic that's covered in the game, because then your boss will just be kind of monotonous and just weird. That, you know, like, oh, I have to use absolutely everything I have. But it should at least be, you know, combos of things that you've learned, like certain mechanics combined together, or at least wrap up some of the knowledge you have. Could kind of tie everything together. The at least like I did like how Lucifer looked like. I really kind of liked his design.
Yeah, no, his graphical design and all the graphical design in the game was great, and that's why we see video and, you know, it's good. All through the video, writing is okay, good. Audio is okay, good. And that's kind of what we expected. And yeah, it's a beautiful game and great design and graphics and animation, and definitely kept me engaged. So the mechanics are okay. There are very good parts: parry system, dodge iframes, different attacks for situations. However, some areas of the game fall very flat. Some of the boss encounters, notably. And the last stage, very notably. There we go. It's a little more than the box can hold, but I needed to get it out there. And all of that needs to be said because the game is so close to good for mechanics. There was also a boss you don't fight. That's fine. I'm okay with that. You're talking about the big guy that you ride that can't be killed. You have to take him over and like use him to wreck things. Bugs. I did not hit a single bug, personally.
Yeah, I don't remember there being issues. I mean, with it being on consoles exclusively,
it's less likely.
Yeah, the bar is usually pretty high for that. They can't have it like crashing and stuff like that. It's usually pretty. At least it was pretty rare for games to crash. Nowadays, it's not so much. We have these good old, you know, break your system bugs that Bethesda likes to put out sometimes.
This little movie shows the bug. Sorry for the quality. So somebody hit a bug, but I'm finding there's nothing you can do. You'll have to start a new game and remember next time not to go back to that save point. After you exit that room, you get a checkpoint anyway. Okay. That's pretty bad. So if you're just moving forward playing the game, you're probably fine. But if you're trying to do a completion playthrough, there are major blocking bugs. So I'm going to give it an okay. We didn't hit it because we casually played it. But if you're not casually playing it and you're exploring everywhere and backtracking, there are soft locks.
It's also possible that it could be patched up by now, depending on... I mean, I guess if you have the disc and you're not online, it's just going to be what it is. But that's fair if there's that major of a bug. was playing a game actually the other day that has a soft lock in it, and it was kind of annoying. If you get caught with items, they get confiscated. And I had a quest item that I need to be able to beat the game, and I got caught and confiscated, and it just despawned it, and it never respawned. So I had to restart, and it was just cool.
That
I haven't
sucks.
been soft locked in a long time, and soft lock is a terrible feeling. You just get incredibly frustrated at developers being like, man, what the hell?
Though, to be fair, the game that I got soft locked the most in was not the developer's fault.
What game is that?
Final Fantasy Tactics. There's like chain battles where you fight like 5 battles in a row, and you can save after each battle, but they get harder and harder and harder as you go. And if you've like saved over all of your saves that you have, and all of a sudden every save is just in this chain of fights, and you can't beat that last fight, you've got no choice. You have to start over. The important part, if you're going to play Final Fantasy Tactics, make sure you always have a save that can hit random encounters. Never save over that save.
Yeah, that happened to me with Fallout 3. I soft locked at the end of the game because I was on the expectation that you'd be able to explore a lot still, because they kept boasting about how much content there was in the game, and there wasn't really too much of an indication that when you beat the main story, it just ended. So I saved before the boss because it's typically what you'll do in a game, because the boss might kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out it's barely even a boss, and then as soon as you beat it, that's it. Your game's done.
Yep.
And I didn't have multiple saves. I wasn't expecting it, and eventually they released it with the DLC that makes it so you can still play after. But for my first playthrough, I'm like, oh well, that's it. I guess that's what I get for doing the story first, to see if I would get any cool unlocks to do all the other side quests first. And it's like, it's not great.
No, I remember that boss. Very disappointing boss. One of my least favorite last bosses of all time.
I wouldn't even call it a boss. It was just some person.
Well, he did have a name. And he did take 2 headshots rather than 1.
I think I got them in one. I think I crit, and they just boop, and I'm like, oh, okay. No! And that was it. At least which is we'll talk about that too. But I really like how New Vegas did their endings. So
hey, Val and viewers, welcome. Val will pop in shortly. He's always just a touch behind his hosts. But to all the rest of you, how's it going? We're talking about Dante's Inferno. If you know the game, come argue with us about it. Please do. I welcome it. So I've already, just without saying anything while we were discussing bugs and mechanics, given RNG a good, and there's no RNG to the game, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I guess there isn't. I'm trying to think if there is. Yeah, that's good. It'd be annoying.
It would be. There's no reason to have RNG in this game. It's a straight up action game. It should do what you've told it to do, and it should respond in ways that you're expecting it to respond. Control. I was the only one playing it. You guys were watching it. Some of you may have played it. If you have played Dante's Inferno, RNG hit deflection or hit detection.
Yeah, no? I hate that when you have a hit chance.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. There was no RNG hit detection, and yes, that's fucking terrible unless you're playing a CRPG or an MMO, which is basically an online CRPG.
Yep. I'm fine with that. My problem was that there wasn't really a warning when they first did it. A lot of games will, say, "Hey, there's no turning back after this." Kind of, they'll hint to it, maybe not so blatantly, or maybe there was, and I just completely went over my head. But
no, there was no warning.
It was just, it just kind of got you. And the story is short. It is short. You can beat it in a couple hours. So it was kind of just I wasn't expecting it to be done yet, and then now my game's done. Okay, and it's one of those things where with that game, the fault with it is that the intro is not long, but if you've done it already,
what do you mean not long?
I've definitely played a lot longer ones, but it does take time. So it was kind of like a bitter thing of you can still do at least different things with it, so you can keep it unique. But it was
one of the first things the modders, which are the biggest fans of that game, did is mod out the intro. Okay, that says everything about the intro.
I'm just used to a lot of these modern games now that have 20 to 30 to 40 minute intros, and I'm like, man, want to do the things, especially if you've done it once already. The first time it's cool, but after I'm like, I can't skip this. Like, I love Red Dead, but man, Red Dead 2's intro is long, and it's a lot of walking in the snow. And going back the second time, I'm like, this is okay. This is this is a lot. There's no like, just some choices you make, they don't really matter. So it's kind of just you just go on autopilot for a little bit.
Yeah, it is nice to be able to skip stuff like that. I'm with you. That's probably my biggest complaint about Horizon Zero Dawn as well as the beginning part, the intro. But the first time you play the game, it's kind of nice because it is teaching you about all the mechanics in the game, and there are quite a few that you should know about. But yeah, the second time, skip.
One last little point on it. Like New Vegas did a really good job on it because it's an optional quest that you do. In New Vegas, we're like, you talk to them and the person's like, hey, let's go around. I'll show you how to use the gun and use all the stuff and like that. But if you're playing for your second time, you just be like, no thanks. Like, skip it, please. And then you continue forward. And it still ties it into the story, at least. So, it's not super jarring effect. It's an optional thing. It heavily hints to do the tutorial mission when you first start playing. But if you play it through a second time, you know how to just not do it.
I'm honestly, like, still today, I think my favorite tutorials in games are the Final Fantasies. You get, like, the basic combat at the very beginning where you basically can't lose just to get you used to the AI. You just hit a couple buttons, you'll win. Then they give you a room where you can talk to people, learn things, they explain everything if you need to, or you can just walk past it and play the game. Lovely way to do it. The intro in Skyrim that does not let you save before finishing your character, forcing you to replay the intro every new game.
Yeah, that's exactly it as well. It's very annoying.
Did they mod out the intros in that one as well?
Yeah, most definitely. But if you're playing on console, you can't really do that. And it's not a super long intro, but it's long enough that, like, if something comes up, you're going to want to save and leave. And if you can't do that, and you spent a lot of time creating your character. That's what was nice about the ones I did previously. You do the intro as an anonymous character, and then when you finish the intro, you design your character, which is
that's how Skyrim is.
To do it. Skyrim, you create your character first, and then you watch all the stuff go down. And then
pretty sure I went through it, and then after the snow part, I make my character.
It's when it's the cart comes in, and then you sit there and like watch the guy get the dragons and stuff show up. I don't think you can.
Yeah, you can't save or make your character at that point. All that happens. After that happens, when you escape is when you make your character. And that's why Board is saying you can't save during that part, so you have to rewatch that part every time to be able to make your character after that part and play the game.
No, I'm pretty sure you I won't argue too much because I played it recently, but you make it before it all goes down. But yeah, you can't save till after. It doesn't really matter too much. But it'd be nice if they put that at the end, so then you can put all that time into designing your character at the end and not the beginning in case something comes up.
I admittedly only played Skyrim once and didn't finish it, so I'm not one to argue. And hey, Cuddle, welcome.
It is like I enjoyed it a bit, but unfortunately for me, it was one of those games that corrupted my save, and it's really hard for me to go back. And like I wasn't super far, but I was far enough that for me, it's really hard for me to go back and play a game again when I've kind of done a lot of the same quests, especially if it's not a full playthrough, because I still have that bitter feeling of, all right, now it kind of just feels like a chore, because a lot of these quests are run to a cave, get the thing, and run back. And if you've done it already, it's you're not really getting too sucked in, and that kind of killed it for me.
Yeah.
But I hate it. I hate it when they do that.
For me, what killed it was I got to a quest where it was open world and you had to kill a bunch of people and like take over all these castles on the world map. And it was in the area where the memory leak still existed. So I was literally crashing every 5 minutes with all these dead bodies piling up as I'm running around the outside of the castle killing things. So I had a timer going to remind me to save every 4 or 5 minutes and just keep hitting quick save, and then it would like crash a minute or two after that, and I'd reload and I'd get maybe 5 or 6. And I did this for like half an hour and went, why am I playing this game? And I've never touched it again. That was the end.
The on-launch performance. So like Oblivion through to just, I guess, most of these games that have been published have just not been great. I remember when quad core was, if you had a quad core chip, you just couldn't play Oblivion. It just didn't work. You had to wait for a patch, which was not not a fun time to find out. And I think the same thing might have happened. And I remember there being a similar. I got Skyrim on launch, and I remember there being some issues that I've had. It was definitely super unstable, and of course, it led it up to my save game getting corrupted, which is bullshit. It's so bullshit.
The controls were sharp and responsive. There was very little assumption for the player. Do you know what I mean by that? Because I complain about games assuming what I want them to do all the time. Do you get what I'm saying by assumption for the player?
I think so. I think you're talking about like it when you're kind of spamming the buttons quite a bit in the combos, it automatically kind of does things for you.
Yeah, automatically facing things, automatically targeting things. If you hit the button, you should just attack the way you're facing, in my mind. Because when you start trying to figure out what the player wanted, then you're not doing necessarily what the player wants. You know what I mean? Like, prime example, the one I always go to is The Witcher 3. Like, I can be like 30 feet away from an enemy and have him be on like a 30 degree from me, and I hit attack once and I like float over to him and smack him. And because of all that automation and assumption, sometimes I want to attack the enemy here and I hit the button and I attack the enemy over there. Because it's trying to figure out where I wanted to attack and making an assumption on direction and all this other stuff. I just wanted to attack the enemy that I'm close to, but because you're always floating around and hitting things, I'm kind of just hitting the button all the time because I know you're going to jump at something and hit it. It takes so much finality out of the controls. Now, my biggest complaint, and this is why I always use Witcher 3, why don't you let me get on my horse that easily? Why is it I need to be in a little narrow focus, looking at my saddle on the right part of the horse to get on it, but I can hit attack once and float 40 feet away and hit an enemy? Why can't I just be within 10 feet of my horse and get on it and have to hit the enemy in front of me? Wouldn't that make it a better game? Okay, there's my rant. Writing. We get an okay. Video, we get a good. Audio, we get an okay. And gameplay, we get an okay.
Seems about right.
That sounds about right to me. That's about what I expected. Does anybody disagree with that final review of Dante? Solidly okay with some nice video? I first played after major patches. Yeah, we should never play Bethesda games within a year of their release. Basically what it is.
That is painfully accurate when it comes to Fallout 76.
Or any other game they've ever released. All right, that's about an hour, and that's about Dante done. That's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. Satan's dick sold me back in the day. It was terrifying. He is half horse. And it was waving in my face forever because it took me so long to beat the damn guy. I might even argue that solidly okay with good video might have been the developer's intentions with Dante's Inferno. Maybe. Let's say that was the manager's intention with Dante's Inferno. How dare you give the game I loved as a teen an okay. Yeah, let's say the manager's intention. I just have to believe in my heart somewhere that all the developers in the game world that are making shit money to make games are there because they want to make good games. Because why else would they work so hard for shit money?
Lots of reasons, unfortunately. But
yeah, I know.
It's at least starting to get a bit better, it seems. But I mean, you get kind of sucked into these things, or you get working somewhere. You don't always have a lot of say at that dev level. What goes on, you kind of just have to do.
I know that they don't have the say on if it's a good game or not. I just have to believe that they joined or got into the world of game dev because they wanted to make good games. That was their purpose. Because I don't see a lot of people going into the game dev world being, I'm going to make a fortune! That's not a reason to join the game dev world, because this is never going to happen. Ever. Yeah. That's my stance on that. I think they do want to make the best game they can. And it's just down to how much time they're given to do it and what they're allowed to do by the management. Okay, we happy few. This is going to be an interesting one. And unfortunately, we have a slightly less time. I guess we can go a little late. Do you have anywhere to go?
Nope.
Okay, good.
No, I do not.
We can go 10, 15 late if we need to then. World building for We Happy Few. Does anybody in chat not know We Happy Few? Did everybody get to see that playthrough? Because what a game. And world building, I'll go let you guys answer first. You missed it entirely? Very sad. You should watch those VODs, GlenCon. You should watch those VODs. That was a game. That was a game. Very interesting. It's better than a lot of movies I've seen lately. Some of the story twists in it were just... I never saw them coming. And I always see twists coming. I'm that guy that knows the whole movie 5 minutes after it starts. And at the end of some of these playthroughs of characters, I was like I became Pog U. I became the physical embodiment of Pog U. It happened. What do you think for world building, Suda?
I was surprised with this. I was really intrigued when this game was announced, and then I can't remember what was going on when it launched. I wanted to play it on launch, but something else came up, and I saw that it was getting kind of mixed reviews, so I ended up just kind of letting it fall under my radar, and I kind of wish I actually, played it on release rather than later on after seeing it, because it was I liked it. It was quite the story they told. It was quite the world they put you in. It's not something that's new. Like what if Germany won, but I found that the way they did it was super unique. Just the entire aesthetic. Not even just visual aesthetic, but overall just the aesthetic to just every sense that it gives you, from what you're hearing, from what you're seeing, to interacting with people. I thought it was extremely well done.
A very vivid living world with colorful characters and setting. Now, Cuddle, recommending a game, I nodded, but it's really hard to say, I recommend this game to everybody, because I don't recommend that game to everybody. It's not a game for everybody. Absolutely not a game for everybody. It's not one of those transcendent games where I'm like, you have to play this game, I don't care who you are. It's not that. What it is if you like BioShock, if you like Dishonored, if you like stealth games, if you like that FPS story-driven experience, all of that kind of stuff, survival elements, all of that stuff is in the game, and it's all well done. And it's all so well done that even the difficulty system can disable any element of the game. If you don't like survival, you can turn off the survival. If you don't like stealth, you can make the stealth super simple. You can turn them up, if that's the element of the game you wanted. So if those areas of a game are intriguing to you, it is a fantastically written game and a well-made game, and I recommend playing it. That being said, let's go into characters with another good, because I was just talking about how colorful and good and fantastic the characters are. Characters are unique, deep, colorful, and have their own desires and motivations. And I'm not just talking the player characters. Every character in the game has desires, motivations, inspirations, purpose. Well done. They're not flat characters. Every single one of them you could dig into. You might not have a lot of interaction with them, but you can go get more info about them. There's notes and stuff everywhere in the game with lore for building that world.
That's probably what surprised me the most with it. I wasn't expecting the characters to be it's definitely a different style, and I could see why it could be kind of jarring and annoying to certain people. Because I have seen quite a few reviews saying that, it wasn't well done on the character front. But I think for that kind of style of having a serious topic but presenting it in a way that's not childish to say it, but a bit silly, so that it's a bit easier to digest or to kind of throw you off the trail of what's kind of actually going on a bit. I think that was at least well done.
Yeah, it had a bit of camp, I'd call it. It was done like a 70s movie, basically.
Yeah, it was like satirical on the culture side of things.
Yeah, perfect satire.
Yeah, it was
surprising. No spoilers. Very good. Worth playing for the story. I want to leave it at that. I don't want to give too much away. The game's story is really its driving, selling factor. Its writing is by far its strongest point. Blew me away.
Yeah, it is, especially the multi-act, the three different kind of, I guess I'll call them not timelines, but I guess different character stories.
Yeah.
And it's like, even personally, it was hard for me to pick, a favorite from them all. They were all like very, very well done. None of them were like, boring or I wish I was still playing as the other character. It was, when you first change, of course, it's a bit of like, oh, okay, well now I'm, doing this now. But it's each one in its own way was still very unique and very captivating. And my God, the writing and the overall just what happens it's good.
Absolutely. I was looking for a FPS output. I don't remember any dips. I think it was running at around 100 120 frames on my hardware in 1440.
This game had a lot of issues on launch, which was a lot of people were kind of upset with it. And a lot of reviews saying that it, wasn't performing well, but it seems like they've probably patched those things out by now.
Hardware with a smooth 100 plus FPS from an there we go. Put some numbers in there to give an idea of it, because that was pretty good numbers, and that's not super high end card. It's actually mid tier. So good performance. I think I had one or two crashes, but they were from my video drivers crashing, which happens when I don't reboot often enough and have OBS and gaming happening. Thank God for this podcast. No heavenly sword, please. No more twing twang. No more twing twang. No more twang for twing twang. Twing twang done. Hey, chugga boom. Welcome, buddy. Hope you've been lurking.
I did notice some frame drops when you were outside, but I don't know if it was something that would have been super noticeable. But at least for your experience, it seemed like it was good.
Yeah.
For how the game is now, if you have, a pretty decent rig, it should run fairly well.
I know you every day, buddy. It's all good. You know me, I love my lurkers. Lurkers make a channel. Guys are always welcome here. And if you had an account, you'd even be able to use the awesome lurk emote I made for you lurkers. Or a sub, not an account. Not an account. You have an account. It's a Twitch account. Pedantic. Animation?
I don't know about this one. I lean like it. It was. It's one of those things where it's so hard to do well in first-person perspective for combat and stuff like that. And then other than that, the actual just character animations were I'd say were well done. But even then, I wasn't too sure if it was. They were jarring, but I wasn't sure if it was like an intent to have everything kind of just in that uncanny valley to make you uncomfortable, or if it was just what happened and they ran with it. And I haven't been able to distinguish if this is what they went to do and this is how it is. But
that's sort of where I am at with it too. Although I think it was intentional, just because there's so much attention to detail and so much well done in the game. But yeah, the animation was, there was something just a little off about it, just a little off. But I think that little off was intentional. With you on that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like, because even if it was intentional, if it isn't, still super obvious that it's supposed to be like this, it can be kind of like I said, like to me at least when I was going through it, it was like it's harder for me to. I'm more okay leaning good rather than good leaning okay. It's hard. It's hard for me, but I'd be fine with an okay.
I'd be fine with an okay as well.
Yeah, it was. I think it's all just unfortunate that the first person. It's just so hard to do those animations well because it requires an insane amount of polish.
It does.
To be
it does. You've got such a view from your position in the first person, and the ability to move, angle, and look around while they're moving just adds so much strain to the animators. Does anybody disagree with the okay animation? Are there any We Happy Few fans out there frothing at the mouth like, what are you talking about? The animation's good. Go ahead and try to argue with us. We'll explain. Oh, hey, look what I just found on my desk. It's come to kill me. I'm brutally allergic to fluff like that. It just kills me.
That is rough.
Pookie always laughs at me when the cottonwood starts flying in the air, and like I see cottonwood floating by in my car. I'm like a little like, closing all the windows, turning on the air recycle so it doesn't pump it into my car. Hey, what's up, everyone? Did I miss any good conversation? You did. You always miss good conversation when you miss here. You know that. About an hour and 15 minutes worth of it. We went over all of Dante's Inferno, and we're just digging into We Happy Few. And hey, Val, welcome. Thank you very much for the host. Always appreciated. Okay, animation. We're settled on okay. Nobody's disagreed with us yet. So it seems that most people agree. Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm still contemplating it because it's so hard to distinguish if it was intentional, but it did feel like, I guess there's just those minor polishes that, we can't always exactly pinpoint to miss out, but you just overall notice when they aren't there.
Yeah, it's just a couple strange movements, but I think a lot of the strange movement also might have been their body proportions were kind of strange. Everybody's really long and lanky in the game.
Yeah, and it definitely would make that a challenge, and it probably explains why it was so jarring to a lot of people, or jarring at least to me myself, and you get so used to not proper, but like more realistic.
How regular humans move. Yeah.
Yeah, and then try to apply it to a stretched one. It's gonna come off a bit weird.
Yeah, they move kind of funny, but that's okay. Style. Except the grandma NPC. That's true. And she moved really normally. Her animations were quite good, actually, wasn't it? The little grandmother shuffling around on the streets and everything. That was fine. No complaints about that one. Especially when I'd go by her and she'd go, how about a cuppa? Style is good.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to... I've seen some people who don't like it, which is fine, but you still got to distinguish between, like not personally liking a style and, the style that they set out to do and accomplished. And it's a big part of that is consistency, and it is, that theme is consistent with how it is from anywhere from, the buildings to the propaganda to the wellies to even just like the UI and inventory and stuff like that. It's all kind of just fits that theme.
Yeah, even if I did not like the game style, I would still be giving it a good. Just so you know, I happen to personally really like the style and thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's unique, it's consistent, it gets the image and point across in the game. There's nothing in the game that's really vague with its style. As soon as you see it, you know what it is. Everything is unique, everything stands out, everything is easy to identify. They basically had two different style presentations for when you're sober and when you're on joy. No, there's three. There's sober, there's on joy, and there's joy withdrawal, which makes everything go dark and flies are flying around and yeah. Which was really, really cool. Very well done. The musical score is good. Yeah,
definitely. I sat for a second there, and I'm like, "Do I remember?" And I'm like, "Yep, I remember I remember the car ride. I remember a lot of the scores and a lot of the scenes. It was well scored."
Yeah. Not only was the musical score perfect for putting you into the year, it was original music. They had original period style music created rather than just using period music.
I didn't know that.
That's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm sure they probably licensed some things, but I mean, for at least a lot of it, if it's original, and yeah, goddamn.
A lot of the music you heard on the record players were cool and or creepy because some of it was slowed down and such. Yep, they warped it in game like it would be warped on an overplayed record. Yeah, musical scores. I just remember it standing out so often. Like I remember the music in so many locations and just being like many times in the game wanting to just stop and stay where I am and be like, I like this song. Let's just hang out here for a bit. Yeah. That doesn't happen often in a game. The game before this one that I remember playing, if I go back to another game where I literally stopped playing the game in the middle of playing the game, put the controller down, and just listened to the music for a while, was Persona 5. And that game had some amazing music. To the point where like one of my favorite boss tracks would come on and I just stop fighting the boss, put it down, and take a dab to the music. Like, yeah, it's good, yeah. Come back to the boss in a bit. No one's arguing or even commenting. I guess that just summarizes it.
Yeah.
Voice acting?
I'd say good.
I'd 100% agree with you.
Yeah, I've heard some people's complaints on this as well, and read a few contrasting opinions. But I think it's one of those things again with like intent. They maybe just didn't agree with it because it is definitely stylized the way everyone talks and speaks, but at least it is consistent. It's not it's not all over the place. Not everyone has different accents and different kind of connotations of their tone. So it's consistent and it's well done. You get the emotion from what people are saying, especially even just the inner monologues when you're going through each of the players. Especially, I found Victoria's was very well done. A lot of when she questioned things and stuff like that, you still kind of feel that bit of anxiety and a bit of uneasiness in her voice when she's really trying to figure out what she's going to do in the situation that she's in.
Has reflection and tone to everything. There is emotional conveyance with the delivery. Each character has a unique sound and is easily identifiable with a good job on different accents. They had English, they had Scottish, they had German. Yeah, and all of it I remember being good. I loved the acting. The voice acting sucked me right into the world.
Yeah, it is well done. It's definitely like it has that play effect, like you're watching like a theater.
Yeah.
Very theatric.
Yes, theatrical is a good way to put it. I thought the voice acting was spot on from most of the main characters. Yep, I agree. Sound effects.
Well, this one, I don't know. I guess I'm probably okay leading good. I don't remember there being anything too terrible, but I don't remember them, Actually, yeah, I'll probably lean to good, because there's a lot of effects, like, item-wise, especially with Joy adding into everything with there, they kind of fall under, more sound effects rather than musical score, and I found that they did that stuff very, very well when you're, through withdrawal, or if you're on Joy, or even just everything else around and everything that's going on, all the little kind of nuance and noises in the background and the conversations people will have, the way they walk, and
I'd say that's voice acting and musical score still for a lot of that. I think what I'm thinking of is the clunk attack sound effects and the block and parry sound effects. There's no real difference between the block and parry sound. The combat sounds were anemic at best.
Yeah,
I think it's okay at best.
I'm fine with it, okay.
I would have really liked more differentiation between the parry and the block sounds. Stuff like that. Using the audio to give more information about the game state.
The ambient sound effects were really good. I agree with Val on that. I was couldn't pinpoint them exactly which ones, but especially with the joy, I thought it was overall the experience was just good. But definitely falls back in that combat, which unfortunately again is very hard to do with first person combat.
Oh yeah, and honestly, like before we get to the mechanics, and well, I'm sure we'll talk about it there, but for a first person view melee game, actually did very well. I'm not usually a fan. Maybe I've just played so many of them now that I'm getting better at judging my depth and learn to run at enemies while I'm swinging. But then you're getting into where are the hitboxes, how far do the hitboxes linger, how far do they go forward, and with all of that factored in, they made it actually a very easy experience to backtrack away, run into with a swing, and actually make contact when you want to. And they also had a forward movement with their swing at times. If like the follow-up has a forward step with it, so if you miss on your first swing, you'll step forward with your second swing to close gap. And while I may have missed my first swing often, I don't think I ever missed the second swing because of that forward step. Very important.
Yeah. It's hard to do it well, but it was definitely done better than most. It can be a little annoying, but it could have been a whole lot worse. There's games that we've talked about before that have just done first person combat as an afterthought. It can really take away from the experience. I find that the combat in this game at least added to the experience a bit.
Yes.
It wasn't too much of a detriment.
Accessibility.
I really wanted to give it a good, but I don't know. I'm still leaning. I guess I'll take a bit of discussion. It has basically almost everything it needs to get a good, besides colorblind mode. But it's one of those games where it's, I could see it being very difficult to add a colorblind.
Yeah.
Especially when the game relies on it so much, but it still might have been nice if there was. It still could have at least. It's something that was possible.
Let's give it a good, and we can justify this
Yeah.
because it does have a lot.
It has a.
And while it doesn't have colorblind profiles, everything has enough contrast to stand out. And there's no color puzzles. There's never a time where you need to know a color.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. There could be, there couldn't be, but it's just nice to at least. If it was there, it's not. But there's so much else that they've done that I'm still fine with giving it a good. I mean, anywhere from just that difficulty sliders to the subtitles with subtitle text size is very important. A lot of games still have subtitles, but we're going to find nowadays that people are moving to higher and higher resolutions, that if you can't change the scaling of the text, you're going to be able to have like text for ants, and you just aren't going to be able to read it for all. But not just that there were subtitles, but there were subtitles for dialogue, ambient noises, as well as like the news ticker that you can turn on.
Yeah, the CC/subs. It's not just subs, you can also do proper closed captioning for all the audio happening, which is very cool.
Yeah, a lot of this game is dialogue and hearing things that are going on around you, and it's nice that you can still get that same experience without having to, if for whatever reason like you can't hear it. And then the difficulty. I think most games should start moving to a similar model of having configurable difficulty. Not all, but it's definitely helpful in certain games like this, where maybe if the mechanic isn't super important to the game for why it's there, and it's say for some reason someone just either hates it or they have some sort of limitation where it's just something that isn't fun for them and they just would rather not have it. At least now they have that option.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think is great, especially if a game like this that's so story oriented. It's nice that you can get that customized experience where it's not. It's like you still get the full effect of everything, but you're not going to be stuck and frustrated behind a mechanic that you just don't like to do.
Exactly. This game was never meant to be a challenge. This game was never meant to be one where you're testing your skills against something. This is a game like watching a movie. And if you're watching a movie, nobody wants to be stuck on a chapter. You want to know what the hell happens next. If you do want some challenge from your game, you can turn it up if you're like me and you don't want to just, blindly flow through everything without trying. But that option is there. And the individuality of those options is the cool part that we're always bragging and boasting and complimenting and saying people should do. And the fact that they did it is just fantastic. Fantastic.
It's nice because you can still have it like because that's typically what happens with like preset difficulty settings. We have easy, medium, hard. They're just the same settings from the hood, just preset. But being able to have like those same values, easy, medium, hard, but then also having like a custom option, being like, yeah, so these are the values that are being tweaked by this. But now you can kind of just tweak them yourself. If if easy is too easy, because if you go on easy, now you can't die. But you had to go on easy because of this other mechanic that you were being frustrated with. It'd be nice to just be able to customize your experience of it so that the game isn't just boring.
Yes, and it's not super hard to do. It's not a ton of work to add. It's not. You're already adjusting those values. Just let us adjust them individually. That's all it is. A quick shout out while we're on it to RimWorld. They nailed it for sandbox games.
Yeah. Kenchi's another good one for that. That really kind of customize a lot of things that are going on. You can customize, like how much damage you'll do versus how much damage other people do versus a lot of stuff going on.
The mechanics. This one's going to be a discussion.
Yeah. That as Val was saying, the combat really kind of like it is like, to be fair, then like first person combat is hard. Like I can't think of any game that was good. And I remember even the games I really enjoyed, like Condemned and stuff like that, they still suffer from a lot of problems, and it can still be very jarring and frustrating because it just doesn't feel like polished. It's hard to get that smooth feeling.
I can't address the more than two people thing though, because there were 3 characters, and with my first character, 2 people wasn't a big deal. I could take on 2 people, no problem. A little bit of work, but it is 2-on-1. It's harder, but I could still do it. He was decent at combat. Then I got the girl. She has no combat skills. Pretty much 1-on-1 most of the time, and if it was more than 1-on-1 with her, I basically had to run. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's accurately describing her abilities fairly well, and giving different abilities to different characters quite well for the combat. And then I got Ollie, who is foul-mouthed and pisses people off a lot, but I could straight up take on 4 people with him. Did multiple times. Took them all out. He was a trained military man. He's a good fighter. And I could just cleave through people and wreck them. Ollie was a beast. So that tends to be good. That pushes it towards good for sure.
Yeah, there's everything else that is combined with it, even though the combat itself like falls a bit flat. Just the actual, it is kind of just attack and then block parry, which at least they have block and parry, as we talked about. Like if we compare it to a kind of similar game, at least, like Pathologic 2. I feel like if Pathologic 2's combat was a lot closer to how We Happy Few did it would have improved that experience. Being able to have just those little bit nuances of a parry, or more than, or the option to build in where you can just kind of run away and lose someone that's chasing you, but a bit easier. But I say it's hard because you are just kind of smashing them with the cricket bat, and then you smash them and you smash them and you smash them. That's kind of just click, 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 and then they're down. Which I guess can be said for a lot of stuff, but it's so hard to get that like smooth combo feel when you're in a first person perspective, and when you're in third person, you can really tie up that stuff.
You don't need the combo feel. I'm fine with that, right? I'm a Soulsy. There's no combos in Souls. You just hit the right buttons at the right time, and that's kind of what this combat reminds me of. And I'm honestly not turned off by the combat. It was fun enough, engaging enough. I agree with you guys when you said Pathologic 2 probably would have been better off without combat at all. Yeah. Yeah. Well, just, yeah. Good game, though. Good game.
We can go over the other mechanics, because like I'm still iffy on combat, but I'm not iffy because like it's not a hill I'm going to die on. It's just, unfortunately, for first person combat, it's hard. It is really hard, but they seem to have done it.
It is.
I mean,
for the play experience, it's probably the best I've ever experienced first-person melee be. Personally.
For me, it's like I said, I condemned it fairly well. From when I liked it, from this one, it did kind of feel like I would just swing for the fences a bunch of times and cleave and cleave and cleave, which it's okay because it's what we're doing, but it's it is. Improvements could be made, but overall, it wasn't like a chore. It was still at least fun.
Yeah.
It was still fun to hit people and get that combat sense. It wasn't just like, oh my god, this is frustrating. I got to get through all this stuff. It was still it still added to it, didn't subtract from it.
Crafting. Crafting is another mechanic in the game.
Yeah. I think one of the big mechanics as well, joy. I thought was a really cool mechanic.
Joy mechanic, I love. I love that mechanic. That's probably my favorite mechanic in the game. It's so different. I can't think of another game that does anything like it.
It's definitely very unique to this.
That's not to say there isn't another game out there that does it. I don't know every game in the world. I know a lot of them, and I can't think of one.
And then stealthing it seemed to be okay enough. It was kind of silly at first when you just run in and lock a door and that's it. But then at least it kind of is explained by like, oh yeah, they're so hopped up on joy that they don't have
a goldfish.
Yeah, they have low attention span, but it's still at least from a gameplay level, at least it's a nice escape. But also it's kind of it is a bit silly that like, oh, he's here, he went into that room, and okay. It'd be nice if there was a little bit more added to that, but overall, it could have also been, frustrating. Maybe it's different on a harder difficulty. Like it's hard to say. But at least like it's from what I remember, there weren't too many super forced stealth things that you would get skill locked from. So it seemed like overall it was still okay. So add the experience of it's a bit tense to be sneaking around. You got to watch your horizon to see what's going on and plan out your route. But it's still at least a bit forgiving, where if you do get caught, it doesn't just restart you instantly.
Yeah, I'm with you. How I felt on it, crap, it was in my mind. Then I responded to you and it left. What were we just talking about? Curious what the long-term negatives were if you just abused joy as much as possible. Yeah, I'm curious on that too, with what the memory loss meter would do if you filled it up. It must change the ending you get, I'm assuming, because you start remembering stuff, right?
Or forgetting stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the whole game starts
sneaking. To the sneaking experience, I thought the gameplay was very recognizable. It felt like a lot of other stealth games I've played. They follow very similar behavior patterns and whatnot. The biggest difference is this one explained it with the joy. It's not that they made a silly stealth system and then explained it with their story. They took the standard silly stealth system that everyone knows and recognizes and is used to and is fairly well accepted, and they explained the silly behavior we usually see with their story. I thought that was a very creative touch and approach to it. For that reason, I think it's one of my favorite stealth implementations.
Yeah. Sure. It looks, like I said, like you typically don't like stealth games too much, which is fair because they can get, monotonous. But this one seemed to do it well. You seem to enjoy it quite a bit.
Joy pills equals hummus for you, huh? What, hummus makes you forget things? Or hummus makes you strut? That's what it is.
Some good quality hummus. I'll probably give mechanics good.
The Joy strut is the best animation. There we go. Because it was. Oh, we went out to mechanics. We didn't do bugs, but that's okay. Because I love that.
It reminds me of The Sims. All the Sims animations are like that. When your Sim gets super happy, it just gets over the top and hilarious. But at least they explain it more in the We Happy Few. It is just, yep, you're hopped up on joy.
So crafting, I like for the most part. I like that it's quick, not super time consuming. It plays a decent role in the game. I wish the crafting would have been a little more on the girl's playthrough, Sally. She has lots of stuff she can craft, and I just didn't ever really use any of it.
Yeah, it's fair. I guess it's yeah. I guess it's kind of up to if you wanted to build it. I guess you didn't really have to too much.
Well, I wanted to, but I'd never found the stuff, and I wasn't willing to just like stop playing the game and go wandering around and collecting stuff just to try to make this thing. They just give me some to let me play with these things you've made. She had that atomizer spray that you could put different chemicals and stuff in, and I never made a single one. Never got the ingredients to make them. Never got to use one. The whole playthrough. I really wanted to, and I never got to. So I wish that was used more. Because there's a whole side of stuff and a whole side of combat through that, and in addition to the stealth mechanics. I think for that reason I'm leaning okay. Just because there's a lot of good and not necessarily used well. Because it would have been so easy to make it better.
They're also, like, as well as Joy's done, there's still, of course, some stuff that could have been added to there as well. Kind of adding a bit more effect, or having it be a bit more stringent on having your Joy all the time, making it a bit more, in your face of the memory loss or the issues with that.
Crafting is well implemented, but we wish it was used more for Sally. Many items were never touched due to rarity of ingredients. What else were we talking about? Joy. Joy was a great mechanic. Any specific areas you'd like to say for improvement, or shall we just say it was a great mechanic?
Yeah, it was great. I
mean, there's always room for improvement in everything. We don't need to state that. Bugs. I didn't hit any. I don't remember a single one I hit.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's one of those things again where I'm trying to think of that, if that AI when you close the door and lock it is intentional or not. If that's just one of those, it's a feature. We'll just shift it, right?
It's that those enemies can't unlock doors.
Yeah, I guess it's not so much a bug and more just it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you do that to a doctor or a red guard, they'll just open the door and come after you. I learned that the hard way.
But yeah, I don't think you had any game-breaking bugs. Did it crash for you? I don't remember it crashing.
I think it crashed once, and that was my video driver crashing, not the game.
Hello, Cartube.
Hey, Mr. Tube. How's your day going? Having a good Saturday? Do you remember We Happy Few? I don't think you've played it. Bad, I had to play Catwoman.
Oh, man.
Rip. I'm sorry. It's not just any Catwoman pseudo. It's the GBA Catwoman based on the Catwoman movie with what's her name in it.
All you had to say was GBA, and I'm like, there's a lot of hot garbage that was made for that.
The platforming in that Catwoman game is some fine craftsmanship there. Halle Berry, thank you. Yes, Halle Berry. Seemed like the beginning of Ollie's playthrough was kind of a nightmare if you couldn't craft or find the suit you needed to blend in. The suit that I needed wasn't the blend-in suit. Which is, that did kind of suck, not having the blend-in suit. I never even got one, I don't think, but I could have eventually crafted it. The suit that I needed was the padded suit to stop me from getting stung by bees when I gather the honey. But it turned out that whole arc that I was too focused on was really just superfluous. I could have just eaten potatoes to keep my blood sugar up. It was just a blood sugar fix to the game, and they were trying to introduce you to it. So the blood sugar mechanic and the harvesting bee mechanic, that was all great. That was well done. The issue then becomes more about the... What would we call that an issue of? Gameplay. But where? We don't have an area for that yet, do we? That's more like game conditioning, player conditioning.
I think it probably falls more under mechanics, at least as a default.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because they didn't make the mechanics super accessible for that, but it's really more of an impedance to game uptake. Which you and I also complained about Dark Souls the same way. Because we both ran past the first weapon in the game because something was shooting an arrow at us and proceeded to beat the thing shooting arrows at us to death with our crappy little broken sword.
Yeah, I made it all the way to the boss, and I was like, or the tough area. And I was like, oh, well, this is not working. And it's like, oh, there's a sword you can grab. I'm like, I did it. Now I feel dumb. It's like, this game makes me feel dumb.
I had the same experience playing the game. Like, I'm fighting things with this little tiny sword. I'm like, they said this game was hard, but this seems really ridiculous. Maybe you could have replay streams where some Saturdays or Sundays where you have time to do a 10-hour stream. Just choose a game and replay and try something in it you never did your first playthrough. No. That doesn't sound fun at all. No, I don't want to do that. Bugs. I'm going to give it a good because I can't remember a single bug.
It's fair, Jeff. And I'm sure there probably were a bunch on launch. Maybe they got patched out, or at least for the playthrough, yeah, there wasn't really any.
Yeah, I don't even remember state issues or anything like that I could remember.
Made it fall to the ground or anything? Or...
No, none of it. And RNG, I think, was good too in the game. Because the only RNG was what's in containers. And it was always a good distribution. Never overpowered, always well stocked.
I'm trying to think of anything else that would have it in there, but if it's not obvious to me, that's usually my ruling is if you can't really tell if there's RNG or not, it's probably good RNG.
Yeah. Sometimes, like I said, we have given games bad for not having enough RNG. It does happen. Very game dependent.
I think there are some things that are generated. I don't know if it's just. Yeah, I guess it mostly just is items, and if you had most of the stuff you needed, except for it kind of ties back into like the rarity of some of the ingredients you didn't get. I don't know if that ties in more into like RNG or if that was something they purposely just made never really happen. I don't know. Like, it would take like another playthrough for someone to be like, oh, I found those same ingredients, no problem, and maybe you just had bad RNG. But I think overall it seemed like it was okay.
Slay the Spire's RNG is awesome. Perfect. Exactly where it should be. Love that game. You want that RNG. The RNG that would be bad in Slay the Spire is if they had RNG that Hearthstone has. That's bad RNG. When I play my card, I want it to do what I want it to do, not what it wants it to do. Now, the cards that I draw, those should be random. Not always all the most expensive cards in my deck, and stop giving me the same cards back when I throw them away on my one reshuffle. God damn it. End Hearthstone rant.
RNG is a rough one. Especially when you're first playing that game, because it is very RNG heavy, but that's what they kind of go for.
Yeah.
So I guess it helps a bit with, I guess, accessibility, but it's annoying when you're like when you play other card games such as like Magic the Gathering or something. If you're fairly skilled and you play someone who isn't fairly skilled, you usually beat them all the time, which your knowledge of the game is there. And then with Hearthstone, sometimes it really doesn't matter because you can just get so unlucky with the combos you need to set up if you run some of those decks, or if someone's running a bit of a cheese deck and they just need the stars to align, and it aligns, it wins. But I think it's definitely not for everyone, but I can still see like the draw to it, because it's definitely nice for people who it's a bit easier for them to access at first when you can just have luck help out where maybe your skill isn't quite there at the start.
I definitely did not stick to the game. I bounced right off of it when I tried to play it. I made this pretty cool Zoolock deck back in the early days. Made my own. Took the stock Zoolock deck, played with it for a little bit, modified it to my own likes, got up to like high silver, low gold, and then it was really to the point where I just had to basically sit there and grind and keep playing because I'm going to lose some games due to luck, period, because I didn't draw any cards I can play in my first 2 or 3 turns, even though I have like 7 cards in the deck that I cost more than 2.
Yeah, it definitely appeals to a lot of a bit of like that gambling rush. A lot of people really enjoy that, but of course the high and lows of it, it's not for everyone. Not everyone likes that. Either I win on this drop or I lose. It's a lot of people just want to be able to have that calculated error. If I do this, I'm going to win, rather than all right, let's just see how the dice rolls.
I mean, there's still top deck wins in MTG, but it's far rarer. And at least in MTG, when I play my card, it does what I said I'd do. Yeah. Unless I'm playing red. Red is a whole new ballgame. Control. So you've actually played this, it sounds like, Pseudo.
Yep. Around.
Excellent. Did anybody else in chat actually play We Happy Few? Or were most of you just watching me? I see. I had to actually look at what the emotes were there. I get you. Watching you. Well, I hope it was enjoyable. But I gotta say, I thought the control was pretty damn good.
Yeah, it was good. Like I didn't really have expectations for it, but it was solid. I wasn't frustrated with it. It does what I want it to do.
Hey, Cartube, even the ladders in the game worked well.
Ladders are hard. It was like when I first got into game development, I was trying to make an explorer, a first-person exploring game. I tried to implement a ladder, and it was a rude awakening. It was hard. Like, man, I just want to go up, and then like I was really young, probably young. I would have been like 15 or 16 or something like that, and like it was just this monotonous of just trial and error of this is hard. Looking at guides and like, okay, it is not as straightforward as I thought. I thought it was just hit this and go up, but then I'm like, oh, but I have physics to worry about. Do I turn off physics while going up? And then I would try that, but then I would fall right through the floor, and it was just like
because with no physics, there's no collision.
And I'm like, days of like, oh yeah, I forgot, I could turn off collision, but I need to turn off gravity, but maybe keep collision. But if I turn off collision, then, I can get funky with positioning in the ladder. And it was like this whole big can of worms. And it would have been smart for me just to cut that and be like, no ladders, only hallways. But I ended up just like phasing out of that project. It was a rude awakening of like, yeah, it's hard. This stuff is very, very hard.
That's why when we're talking about initial game dev projects and we're helping people come up with an outline for a first game to make, we're so careful to watch our scope of what is included in these games to be made. Because there are areas of game development that are just so deceptively hard. Like, you think it should just be this simple thing that should work. No. Some games just do a cutscene animation for ladders, or just the black screen and a teleport the player. Yeah, just avoid it. That's what Twing Twang, Heavenly Sword was. You guys were all talking about how quickly I ran up the ladders. There was no control. You run up to the ladder, you hit X once, you don't touch the controller. She just runs her way up. It's all a pre-planned animation. You're at the bottom, you're at the top, there's nothing in between. That's how they made it look so good. And it looked fine. It played well. It was controllable. There's nothing wrong with what they did with that.
Yeah, it's fair. Like, you don't need to have perfect ladders for a game to be good. I'm fine with people not worrying about that, especially since I've tried to do it before, and it is hard. It is. Especially with.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say the FPS platforming I found was quite good in We Happy Few. I never really had an issue with where my feet were landing.
Yeah, and being able to control the actual like jumping around, it didn't feel like the velocity you have when you went into the air wasn't, it was that nice blend between you can still control it and it's not super realistic where you just fly off in a direction and you're like, oh, hope for the best. Um, it was important. Like FPS platforming can be very very difficult to do or hard to fine tune if to get that proper feeling.
My one complaint I did have every once in a while is as I was trying to loot things quickly, I maybe wasn't directly on the loot device, but it was just a quick little adjustment. I think that I'm pretty happy with how specific they wanted you to be. If you were in the general area of most things, you would hit it. Certain things you had to be a little more accurate on because they're around other things. And I thought the spacing of those things was actually pretty well done. Pretty well done.
Yeah. What about combat? How would you find the control in that with the block parry and attacks?
I loved it. I just did. I loved the parry edition. It was great to have a little skill shot in combat. It just keeps you so much more engaged, and it responded well.
It adds a bit of that risk reward, or a little bit more reason to pay attention rather than just holding block and kind of was.
Yeah, exactly. You're not rewarded to just run in and spam an attack button. You actually have to pay attention and respond to events in combat. I have a clip where I say, these ladders are awful, and then I just fly backwards off the ladder and die. Yeah, I think I've seen that one. That was great.
I have made a ladder just like that in a game. I honestly spent like a week trying to make ladders, and they're honestly like to make a basic like ladder like it's in like Counter-Strike where you look at it and just go up isn't like you can still do it from like tutorials and stuff like that. I was just I don't know, young and just wanted to just do it on my own at the time, and man, just trying to figure out everything going on. It was rough. I have a lot of respect for someone who can just the transitioning part of when you're just when the controller moving the character around versus just getting on the ladder. Just for some reason, it's just so hard.
Okay, so here's where I'm at, Pseudo. We're all done, and this is all good. We Happy Few was good across the board.
It really surprised me. I probably shouldn't have paid attention to those initial reviews because it kind of off-put me. It's an unfortunate kind of thing that happens with our brains when we get that initial bias. But it surprised me. It's a solid title.
Yeah, it's one of the ones that when I first saw it, I took note. Like it definitely had my attention the moment I saw it. And it's not really my normal style, so I kind of backburnered it, and hey, one day I might want to play it, and that's why when it was selected, I was so excited. It's like, oh, I get to play a game that I've been interested in. Right on. I like this. But yeah, so I'm going to be setting up the random picker stuff to give away some games right now. Yeah, we're usually done in about 2 minutes from now, and we're going to run a touch late. So while I get these all going here and get all the names entered, why don't you tell us a little bit about what is actually involved in making a ladder?
Sure. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. The way that would have been easiest for me back in the day is just to have a simple check of, can climb. It's the same thing typically when you have any sort of platformer. You'll have a check basically saying, like, is grounded, like, are you on the ground? If not, you typically will apply physics or gravity to pull the character down. But you don't want to do that when they're already on the ground because it's unnecessary depending on if it's a realistic physics simulation or not. So for a ladder, typically what you do is you'll walk up to it. There'll be some sort of hitbox or some area of collision on the ladder that you hit that will change that flag of can climb to true. And then now when you hit that forward, instead of moving you forward, the game will now move you up in the y-axis upwards. It's kind of the basic way to do it. But then even when you go to implementation, there's a bunch of other stuff that comes into that, being like you have to consistently check to make sure you're colliding with the ladder. Do you want to lock the player to the ladder so they can't, move off to the side of it and try to move around? When does the ladder end? You're going to hit the top and you're going to keep going up. But if you can't go forward at all, you're just going to drop right back down, or you're going to get kind of stuck at the very top of the ladder. There's kind of a lot of little nuances to it, but for at least basic a lot of implementations like collision, and then now instead of the W or the forward button moving the player forward, you're now just going to switch it to having them just move up on the y-axis. As always, easier said than done. I think I might still have the project. I should pull it up and just, for old time's sake, just do it.
Go back and fix your ladder.
Yeah, do it in like only a couple hours rather than just trying to brute force stupid implementations of it. It is.
Thoughts on if the game has a jump, using jump to climb instead of forward?
It could depend. It can feel really weird because then, like, do you hold it? Do you tap it? What happens when you hit the top? Like, can you jump off the ladder backwards? It kind of just depends on the overall feel of the game. I do like games that you can jump into ladders. I find that's an important thing to have. I really hate it when you jump into a ladder and they're like, oh no, like, we don't start the ladder unless you're at the very bottom, so you just fall down.
Yeah, that drives me nuts.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, moving forward usually, keeps it consistent, because the problem with using jump to go up, it's, well, how do you get down? Because you have a back movement, but will that move you backwards off the ladder so you fall? Or does that move you down the ladder? And if it moves you down, then it's kind of strange to be using spacebar or the jump button to go up, and then the control for backwards movement to instead now have you go down. It's kind of a conflict.
Or use crouch to go down.
Yeah, there are games that do that.
I've played them. I thought it was a fine way to do it. It didn't confuse me.
Yeah.
I felt it was intuitive and natural.
Yeah. But it kind of depends a lot of times on the game, because not every game also has crouch. So it's kind of those things where if it's a game with a lot of vertical movement and you communicate that at the very start, being like, okay, this is how you're going to move up and down, then yeah, it works. Especially if if you're on a ladder and can look around and need to be able to not be holding W and look to the side and then all of a sudden move off, if it's dedicated buttons for just up and down and still give you that kind of freedom of control.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is those ladders are not as easy as they look to make. However, we're not saying that you should just accept crappy ladders in games. Those people are professionals and they should know how to make a ladder. Unless they aren't professionals, well then it's not a game that you're ever going to play. If you paid for the game, it should be made by professionals. They got paid for it. And the first game goes to the darkness. I'm sure I can track him down. He streams, I follow him, I'll find him. Indie or self-published games, they're still getting paid for it.
It's still a profession at that level.
A copy of Toy Box Turbos. Sounds like a little racing game. Don't recognize that name. All right. Hopefully we can find them. If anybody knows this name or recognizes them, let them know that I want to give them stuff for free. Oh! Let them know that I want to give them a pretty damn good driving game for free. Dirt Rally is legit.
Ooh.
You've all seen me play some Dirt Rally. I think it was Dirt Rally 2.0 I was playing on here. That was a great game. I love that game. I should do more of that, but my hands. My hands!
That poor car.
Yeah. Space Ghost! I didn't get a Space Ghost host today, but we'll see him again. Oh! That's a classic. You can't even get much more classic than this game. It's pretty damn near the classic.
Hey. Good old Pac-Man.
You can't get too much more classic than Pac-Man. I think it loves to give you the same name multiple times in a row once in a while. Hey, another guy I know how to track down. 2, 3, 4. We'll do one more after this. Hey, that's a good game too. We like to give away good games. Sounds like random to you, huh?
We need to add Void Bastards to the available games.
Oh yeah, you got a copy?
Yeah, I got a spare key.
All right. And the last one, a name we recognize. Hey, Needlack, you here? Are you creeping on me? Probably taking the doggo for a walk. Hey, it's a very race-heavy day. Look at that. Very race-heavy day. So, we've given away Dirt Rally, F1, Party Hard, Pac-Man, and Toy Box Turbos. Seems good. Party Hard and Pac-Man are not racing. So 3. But that's okay. You're not a drummer, so you'll get away with it. Pac-Man is absolutely a racing game.
Argument could be made. It's a racing game. No brakes, only go.
I mean, yeah, I guess there's no acceleration or brakes, but there are a lot of corners and there is a timer. Guess it's like Rally X racing? Kind of? Anyway, no. It's 6 p.m. here now. I'm sure it's late in other places too. It's time for my dinner, and we're ordering Thai. Not that Thai, a different Thai. And I'm looking forward to it, yes. But I might be back later. I might. I'm considering it. My hand feels pretty good. I've got this bruise right here, right between my 2 knuckles on the palm. And it hurts like hell. So I've been resting it, and that's why I haven't been playing like all weekend all the time right now. But I do want to do some Kerbal, and it doesn't abuse that area of my hand, and I haven't done nearly enough. Jeb is on a rocket partway to Duna, and Bob is on a rocket back from the Mun, both at the same time, and they've just been stuck in limbo forever, and I feel kind of bad. So maybe we should save them. But maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. You're welcome for the stream. I hope you've all enjoyed. I hope you all learned a little something about the games. We will be adding those games to our reservoir of reviews, and one day they'll be made available to you. But not today. So, have fun. Good time. Thumbs up. Yeah?
Yeah. Good old Saturday.
I'm Deus.
And I'm Pseudo.
May all your shots be headshots.